I'm Jim Collison and live from the Gallup campus here in Omaha, Nebraska. This is Gallup's Theme Thursday, recorded on December 15th, 2015. Theme Thursday is a Gallup webcast series that dives deep into the CliftonStrengths Finder themes, one theme at a time. Today's theme is futuristic. If you have questions, comments, or contributions during the webcast, we do have a live chat room. It's available for you right below the main video window there. If you're at coaching.gallup.com/live, log into the chat room. Login button bottom left, just choose the guest account and put your name in there. Best way to get your questions in. If you're listening to the recorded version or need custom strengths coaching solutions for small, medium, or large organizations, send us an email, coaching@gallup.com. Really, that's the best email for everything if you want to get that in. We have folks that watch that every day. So again, if you have questions, coaching@gallup.com. Don't forget to visit the Gallup Strengths Center. That's just gallupstrengthscenter.com for all your coaching resources and training needs. You can also catch the video now in both streaming and downloadable audio for offline listening. You can capture these programs in the car, in a train, on a plane. As you're traveling, just recoup that time. Sometimes it's hard to sit at your computer and watch these, but recoup that time by putting it on your phone. All the options to get that done and every link you'll ever need to get it done is on our coaches blog, coaching.gallup.com. Jeremy Petrosini is our host today. Jeremy is a senior learning and development consultant here on the riverfront, although he's in Washington, D.C. today. Jeremy, welcome. I think your first leading of Theme Thursday, and typically Jeremy's here for Called to Coach. But Jeremy, welcome to Theme Thursday on Tuesday. No one will know that in the future. Right. We threw tons of people off with that, but welcome to Theme Thursday.
Jim, it's just because the theme is futuristic, and Roseanne and I are already on Thursday.
That's right. We'll just pretend it's Thursday today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited to be here again. I know many of you are strength coaches or just strength enthusiasts, and what I love about Theme Thursday, and again, just even as we've gone over this journey the last few years, it really does move us to, as you know, my colleague, mentor, Kurt Liesveld would always say, is how do we begin to love all 34 themes? And again, if we want to help people to learn about their themes, to eventually get to a point where they live their themes, we need to learn to love them both within ourselves, but also within other people. And so I think it's such a great learning to just hear not only, again, from our Gallup experts on some insights and nuances within each theme, but to hear that from a person that really lives that out and has ingrained that into their life. So I'm going to tee this up a little bit, and then we're going to get to hear from Rosanne Liesveld. Roseanne, I want to thank you first for just being here. So thanks so much for joining us today.
You're welcome.
So let me dive right into futuristic. One of the things, and again, in many of the nuances or things that many of us have read about the theme of futuristic, and I have this in my top 5 as well, but one of the things that we talk about is that individuals with futuristic have the innate ability to clearly envision and inspirationally describe a picture of a better tomorrow. And what's interesting with it, I think sometimes most of us kind of intuitively read the word or theme description for futuristic, and we know that it's a strategic thinking theme. We know that it's kind of within somebody's head that they can kind of envision it. But I think we sometimes miss the nuance that for many people with the high kind of or dominant theme in futuristic, there's also the ability that they have to inspirationally describe that picture of a better tomorrow. When we talk about, again, kind of even more simply, it's kind of vision into the future. I think of kind of a telescope or binoculars of kind of looking forward, and if it's somebody with a kind of a telescope, everybody else around them goes, what do you see? And it's that ability to kind of again vision cast that although it's clear to them, it may not be as clear to everybody around them. So remembering that element of sharing the details, communicating, here's what I see or here's what could be, I think really becomes one of the powerful pieces that, again, many others may not ask, but if you remember that you may see something or you have a unique vision that can add real power to others, I think that's where futuristic kind of comes into play. The adjectives that sometimes are described with futuristic are creative, inspiring, vivid, anticipating, imagining, expressive, communicating, as I talked about, perceptive, future-oriented, and visionary. Again, kind of that ability to kind of see a bigger, broader picture. The nouns are kind of when we think about the roles, you may think of somebody with high futuristic as a forecaster. Are they somebody that, again, can kind of think about what's coming next? There's that sense of, again, the predictor. Here's what might happen. An anticipator. There's somebody that can see what's next and begin to say, oh, I can't wait for, or they begin to create some excitement with that. There's the element, as I talked about, the visionary or the dreamer. Or the imaginer. I like that Disney again even calls one of their lines of work the Imagineer, much like an engineer. Mm-hmm. But so much of what Walt Disney talked about, and I don't know his themes, but I would guess futuristic was probably pretty high. But one of the quotes that he had about dreaming, he said, if you can dream it, you can do it. And it's this element that is until we see the picture, until somebody sees the what could be in their own head and then articulates that or inspires others to put it on paper or bring it to life, we are oftentimes hopeless without that dream. Mm-hmm. Some of the nuances, again, within the theme, when you think about the being aspects of this, and again, with the theme insight, some of you have leveraged the theme insight cards or the online resources, but very simply with futuristic, individuals with futuristic are often fascinated with tomorrow. There's that anticipation again of what will be. They anticipate and imagine what could or should be. It's not just, again, what could be, but there can sometimes be, especially if paired with belief or even achiever of what we need to get done or the belief of why does it need to happen. Roseanne, for you, the activator, let's just make it happen, right? Let's kind of just get started with it. But they anticipate and imagine what could or should be. The contribution piece is they bring previews, predictions, forecasts. Again, kind of the snapshot that you can tap into somebody with futuristic and say, what do you see? I love, actually, Jim Clifton, our chairman, CEO at Gallup, has futuristic high. And I love, one of my favorite questions when I'm interacting with Jim is, Jim, what are you excited about? What do you see in the future? And top of mind, he'll have something to say. He doesn't have to pause. He doesn't have to say, give me some time to think about it. But there's something in his head that he sees and anticipates that, again, acts as a prediction or a forecast to myself or even my colleagues or even you all on the front lines with what are we doing to change the world and get to over 1 billion people that know their strengths. The needs or kind of requirements that somebody with futuristic has is really the opportunity to talk about the future that they see. And again, I think that's one of the most untapped pieces oftentimes with futuristic. We jump sometimes to the barrier label, which is kind of the dreamer, head in the clouds. I think of myself, and Roseanne, you may have had similar scenarios growing up. By the way, I'm very low context, so to think back is almost painfully hard. But I can recall, mostly it was written on report cards when I was a kid, Jeremy stares out the window or daydreams or is distracted, right? Was it my ADD? The answer to that might have been yes, but part of it was just, am I dreaming? Am I again, kind of thinking about what could be? It's not that I've lost interest in what's here now, but again, that ability, that need I have to not only think about it, but then to share that with people. My wife's gotten really good over the years that when I kind of check out, as she would call it, she'll kind of tap back in to say, hey, welcome back. Where'd you go? How was it there? It's that element of, she can tell that in my mind I went somewhere, but reminding me, tell us about it. Where did you go? Yeah. Was it warm? Was it fun? And were we there with you? The other element, again, with this is, again, that people behind futuristic often hate contentment with the status quo. And again, when you think about this, and I love the way, Roseanne, again, you lived and spent your life with Kurt, so you would hear him talk about this all the time, but he would begin to kind of, with his analytical, put these into packages, and he said futuristic naturally fits in that time package. That, again, time is very simply, what happened when, and remember that time. It's kind of, there's a measurable component to time. And in that package, you've got context, which is kind of past time, remember when. You've got adaptability, which is kind of the living in the now, which is present time. You've got connectedness, which is beyond time or kind of between time, kind of connecting the dots. But futuristic brings that future time, right? Imagine when we get to, or I know this will happen, and you can kind of paint the picture that almost feels like it's already happened when a futuristic person is talking about it. Again, the theme is often paired with, it's most commonly actually paired with strategic. So futuristic shows up in about 11% of individuals that have completed StrengthsFinder. Again, we now have over 13 million people that have completed StrengthsFinder. Shows up in about 11% of individuals, but often seen with strategic. And so it's not only that you can see a better world, but if you've got strategic paired with that as well, you can see the route to get us there. I've met plenty of people too who have futuristic high and not strategic, but that's often a good partnership, is to say find someone who it's not only a dream, but we can build it or make it a reality because we've got that strategic, or we've got the activators or the achievers partnered with us on that. A couple other things on futuristic, and then I want to just hear from you, Roseanne. With again, this is your number one theme. Dominant for you, integrates so nicely with so many of your other themes. There was a quote, and I actually find myself, and maybe it's my futuristic or maximizer, but I often will end when I do keynotes for Gallup or even external presentations or talks. There's an Abraham Lincoln quote that is very simply, the best way to predict the future is to create it. And what's interesting, I think sometimes our achiever friends might go, no, that's an achiever quote, or the activators go, just go do something, make it happen. But the reason I accredit it even to futuristic is, again, we can't predict the future or create it if we don't see what's there. And so, again, getting to that what's possible, what's imaginable, and not just letting it exist as a dream, but, again, putting it into reality. So, Roseanne, I want to hear from you. Again, I want to share with people real quick your top 5 futuristic activator, significance, relator, and command. You have spent almost 30 years, right? Coming up here on 30 years with Gallup. You started when you were 12, right?
Yeah.
I knew you'd
I actually taught school for 10 years before that, so I'm really old.
And the beauty of even your story, so you went from being a school teacher to working with Gallup's education practice, even being the practice leader of education. Roseanne co-wrote the book Teach With Your Strengths, and so helping teachers to kind of know their own strengths or begin to understand the strengths of their students and the impact that having a teacher, as Don Clifton would say, a teacher in every classroom who really sees children as unique and seeing the strengths of each individual child and helping them be the best they could be. Again, you spent so much of your career doing that. Recently, again, kind of spending more of your time coaching, teaching, consulting, and really, again, even just kind of coming alongside Kurt as he was really kind of our master teacher at helping the world be better at strengths and, again, live their strengths. So I want to just kind of turn it over to you, Roseanne, with hearing just from you, what are some of the things that come to mind just as I was sharing, talking about futuristic? What does futuristic look like for you, or what would you add to that to kind of round that out for the people listening?
I think futuristic for me has 2 components, and I think you kind of alluded to them, and I don't hear people allude to them quite like you did, Jeremy, so that was cool. The first one is that kind of always be thinking of what's next. So it's really different than the visionary aspect of it, and I hate to use the word visionary because I think it's probably overused and sounds too important, but I think there is this kind of this practical part for me that I'm always thinking about what's next, what should we be thinking of, what will that be like. So very much about tomorrow and the day after that, and then 2 weeks and 3 weeks. And then there's a different part about it for me with futuristic where I kind of can't control it when I get a picture in my head of something, and of something that can be. Often for me, it's very tied to the way something will feel. I like to think about, and when I coach people, I ask them to think about, do they use all 5 senses to be able to describe their pictures in their head? And I can't always do that. I think it's something that's a good kind of practice to be able to do. But I do know that most of my futuristic has this attachment to how something will feel, maybe for myself, but often for the people that I'm talking with. So when I directed choirs, I would talk a lot about when you finish that song, this is what the people in the audience should be feeling. They should be getting goosebumps on both their legs, not just one. And so I loved that idea that you invoked the feeling of something along with what something looked like, felt like, tasted like, smelled like, whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love that though, Roseanne, because like you said, that the nuance again, not just the visionary and you see where it could go, but the predictor, where even for you with your students to say at the end of the song, right? And again, you might already be there in your head with that futuristic piece. At the end of the song, not just here's what we want to accomplish, or again, maybe my maximizer brings the excellence would look like, or the achiever would say, and then we accomplished blank. But I love that you're bringing that back, not even just based on, it's not because you have a lot of relationship building themes packed right there. You've got a lot of influencing themes, but again, I love that human beings are emotional. And again, it's so much of Gallup research. We talk about 70% emotional versus rational in every decision that we make as human beings, whether it's the soda you drink or the car that you drive. And I love the ability or the power that you have, and again, anybody else with futuristic out there, to say turn those thoughts, ideas into feelings. And the power that it lies with the people who listen to you.
Yeah, I think if you don't invoke some kind of emotion when you cast that picture, it will not really stick very well. And so I think that's a practice that some people, it's good for them to try to do that. For me, that's probably one of the most powerful pieces of futuristic, is that I can always get a feeling of what something will feel like.
Yeah, that's great. Talk to a little bit, Roseanne. I know I shared for myself of kind of remembering back a little bit childhood. Again, you may have context low as well, and it might be hard to remember back, right? But share as far back as you can, like, how did you see futuristic, even just kind of show up when you were younger, or even early in your career? How did you see futuristic kind of come to life or begin to be lived out?
When I was quite a bit younger, I have a hard time separating sometimes significance and futuristic for me, because they come together, and activator too often. When I was younger, I think it was more about what will I be. So I think that had a little bit of significance to it too, but it was sure about future a lot. I do have at my house in kind of a tub where I keep keepsakes and things that I did. I have a set of letters, and I didn't realize I even had these until a while back when I was looking for some pictures. And it's kind of funny when I think about it now, but I think it does tell you something about futuristic early on. I have a set of letters that I wrote when I believe it was like 7th or 8th grade, somewhere around that. And what I did is I wrote a letter every 10 years back to my mom. But so I started at 15, and then 25, and 35, and 45, and 55, and I don't remember how long they went. There were probably 10 of them. And in those letters, I described my life and what I was doing. It's kind of like the Christmas cards that we all dread, letters that we dread getting. But this was really, I thought about that the other day. I thought, that was so weirdly futuristic, really, in a way. And it's kind of funny because there were all weird things, like I was living in Springfield, Illinois. I don't know where that came from, and a lot of odd things like that. And I think I was married to a coach, which is
right. Yeah.
But that was like a football coach. Maybe I had this coach thing kind of in my head yet. But it really did kind of show up early, in that I kind of had this vision of what could be. And so when I read, they're really weird in some ways, but it does kind of tell you a little bit about how I tracked with that fairly early on.
Yeah. I hear people with futuristic a lot when I'm coaching them, or even just in conversations when you meet somebody, you're talking about the Strength Finder. But people with futuristic will often, again, when you think back or can remember those moments, you go, oh yeah, I did say that, or I did see that, or that was something I shared with the company 10 years ago and they weren't ready for it. But that element, and I love your integration, like you said, with your significance or activator, but how cool to go back and kind of see those nuances. Share too, and I know again, just so many of the coaches out there were maybe even trained by Kurt, or every one of us that's done something with Strength Finder has been exposed to the content he created. The new Expanding Your Strengths online book and resource obviously was a project that was near and dear to Kurt's heart, kind of helping us see how theme dynamics and how they pair together. I'd love to hear, and I know many people out there would too. So you started with Gallup, right? And then you began to maybe see, and I want to hear your futuristic, see opportunities for Kurt, right? Where you could kind of see a future for him within the organization.
You know, I'm not sure I ever saw a future in the organization. I always saw the match between his basic philosophies, whether it was more of a spiritual bent or whether it was just humanistic or whatever it was. I saw them align so much with the strengths piece. We had a series of classes, a week-long course that was a leadership development thing many years ago, probably 16, 17 years ago. And once in a while, if there would be a spot open in it, you could lobby to have someone go. And I lobbied for him to go to it. And I think that was a life-changing whole week for him. And I think it was after that, actually, after he had actually been in the church for 23 years, he decided it was time for a change. He didn't necessarily think about Gallup at all, but they had lots of information, lots of data, lots of interviews. They had listened to, actually he had won the Vision Award that week of the speeches that they did for Vision. So I think he had futuristic, I think it's maybe like 12 or 13 on his list of strengths. So I just think I knew early on it fit so much of who he was and really who his heart was. So you might kind of say the role and the soul I knew matched, to take some words that he liked to use often.
Yeah, and again, almost that predictor piece that you said of kind of seeing how it could fit. Again, not seeing all the steps or even seeing his role or the influence he would have, but just seeing the fit and that prediction and kind of the way it felt good for you. Let me ask you one more question, and then Jim, we can go to chat just to hear. I know there's some questions rolling out there, which is great. When you kind of think even over the last 6 months, to think of ways, and I mentioned futuristic again. Sometimes does it almost get us in trouble where we're kind of so anticipating what's next? But obviously, even though Disney says dream it and we can build it, the dreams we sometimes have don't always there are real life factors that come into play that sometimes detract from that or take that away. And obviously, the huge significant loss for you of Kurt, as your husband and partner in life. I know there was lots that you guys had dreamed about together, and even a trip you had planned, and so many other things. How is that? How have you dealt with that? I guess from a futuristic perspective, when things happen and something as significant as that, how does that impact you?
Well, I think that strength has. It's almost like I feel like a trick has been played on me in some ways, to be frank, because I would say most of my pictures of the future that I had currently had him in them, as you said. Yeah. So, when I coach people with strengths, I often say, do you ever have to put blinders on? Do you ever have to do, I had a horse when I was a kid, and you had those blinders on them so they didn't get distracted. And I'd sometimes say to people, do you have to put blinders on to be sure you aren't, looking at something that you can't make happen? When my son got married, I was super excited because I am a musician. I like flowers and lots of those things, and I kept getting pictures in my head of what this wonderful occasion could look like, and then I'd go, oh wait, you're the mother-in-law, you're really not supposed to have anything to do with this, which isn't true, that isn't how I was treated. But I had to almost force myself not to get pictures in my head. So now there are times when I have to erase pictures.
Mm-hmm.
And that is not easy to do. I think there's a tenacity to some people that have futuristic. For me it is, I think, because of my other themes, almost a cursed tenacity. And so I literally have to erase some pictures. One day on a plane, I just took my pen to a paper and wrote something that said near future and future further down. I knew that that it was almost easier to write the future because it was just so far enough out there I could get a few pictures in my head. The near future was much harder. And as I said at the onset, some of my futuristic is just about thinking ahead to the next year or month or whatever. And so I really had to work hard to think about and strategize about what do I have in the near future. And so there have been things I've done. I've done some writing that helped me think about what can that look like in the future. I've created, I'm a big gardener, so I've been collaborating on creating a place in our yard that becomes kind of a memorial garden. So I've had lots of opportunity to think about what that will look like and feel like. And so I have forced myself to get new pictures. I wouldn't recommend that to anyone. It's not easy. But sometimes I think practically it shouldn't just take a death to have you to really force you to say, I need to get some different pictures in my head. I have belief number 6, so a lot of times it's about the pictures I have right now aren't that great. They aren't that helpful. They're not going to make a difference. So what pictures are there that I need to pull up from the files?
I love as you're sharing that too, and thank you for going there, because I know even just so much stirred up for you, obviously, in thinking about all of this. But I think that practical piece and again, even for me with Futuristic High, I miss the short-term component of it.
Yeah.
And like you said, where you had so many of those, here's over the next 10 years or 5 years or 9 months, here's what we're going to do. There's the what does tomorrow look like? And I think back to the story you shared a little bit ago, teaching in choir at the end of the song, which is 2 minutes from now. There's still, it's like, that's still futuristic, but it brings more of a here and now. And I love that activity, like you said, where again, it may not be for everybody, but to write that out, to think about those pictures, to think about those steps along the way, which is so powerful. So thanks for sharing that. Jim, let's open up to you with any questions in chat.
Yeah, we've had quite a few. Jeremy, I'll throw this to you, and you can kind of moderate it. How often is futuristic paired with analytical? And there's some question in that, and how do those come together? So, Roseanne, you laughed, so maybe you've got something to say.
Yeah, Roseanne, do you have thoughts on that?
My analytical is slow, and I was married to an analytical. So, yeah, it's slows you down. And I think it was partly that activator piece, too. But Kurt used to say, you always have the idea first. You always see it first, and then I have to analyze it. But in the end, I'm glad you had the picture in your head. That's what he'd say. But we did. There were times he had to analyze things, and he did. When I'd say, "This is an idea. This is a picture." But it's good. I don't know. What would you say, Jeremy, about how often is it paired?
Yeah, and I don't have obviously from a Gallup standpoint, it's always great when we say it's this percentage or here's the likelihood. I don't have that in front of me, Jim. But the element that you see, and like Roseanne said, oftentimes the people with high futuristic have more of that aspirational, kind of 10,000-foot level, whereas the analytical gets much more specific ground level. And so they're somewhat natural opposites. I think I have even coached people who have both high, but I think sometimes that conceptual piece, that conceptual thinker, often then goes, how do we build it? And that's where it's sort of like, think of a Steve Jobs as maybe more a futuristic visionary, and then the engineers, the technical engineers that come alongside to say, here's how we can build that and analyze it, and thinking about all of these different components and factors, and again with analytical, that data component that's in play. And I love, again, for you, Roseanne, knowing that Kurt was highly analytical. I love that the two of you kind of had that both and, in regards to even the partnership. So.
Yeah.
Roseanne, in pre-show, you and I were talking, and we talked about Kurt's ability to simplify and have it make sense, right? From the he would simplify it down and then put it in words that really helped people.
Poetic.
Yeah, poetic from that standpoint. Is that a function? Do you see that as a function of analytical in being able to kind of think it through, boil it down, and put it in a context that makes sense for people?
Gosh, I never thought of it that way. That's a really smart thing. I think maybe it makes sense. Boil it down, analyze it, boil it down, get to the basics. Here are the 2 or 3 things.
He would often share in our courses that his Analytical Maximizer served him really well when he was doing the Paired Up, which is now obviously the book, and expanding your strengths. But he would just talk about with Twitter, limited to a certain number of characters. Right. He really had to think deeply about the nuances, which was his analytical, and then the maximizer was what are the best words to use. And I almost think it was that combination that, again, even maybe added to that poetic way that he had, saying things. Even in the opening comments, and Roseanne, you've heard this story too, but when I talked about Kurt's whole thing of learn your strengths, love your strengths, and live your strengths. It was, teaching a group from Japan where we were with translators, and we were talking about name it, claim it, aim it, and claim it did not translate well for them. And I kept trying to find different ways to say it, and Kurt kind of leaned back. We've got that one photo of him kind of leaned back in the back of the room and says, it's as simple as, learn it, love it, live it. And it just, the whole room, it was like the 4th of July fireworks in the U.S., but it was like his ability to just simplify things. And I think that analytical piece with that maximizer really came into play well there.
Yeah.
So that was Josh's question. Josh, thanks for getting that in the chat room. Maureen Monty asks, how do you help, and Roseanne, I'll throw this to you, how do you help leaders with Futuristic stay in the here and now so that they can help guide their teams for a better future?
Well, I don't know if they always have to stay in the here and now. They have to have somebody that stays in the here and now. They have to have somebody that strategizes. That's where I think linking emotions or feelings, at least in part, to this picture helps followers get on board. And I think when you talk about feelings or emotions, and you can feel them when they're talking about them right now as they're casting this picture of the future, you're not, the picture is out there, but the feelings are right now. And they're powerful. They're just, and so as a leader, I would say don't try. I told this to somebody the other day. They were some really big leader. And I was like, and they had Futuristic, and I said, are you okay with using emotions as you talk about the pictures? And they hesitated a little bit at first, and I said, that will be how you engage your people. That is what will take them to where you're thinking about. So that's one thing. The second thing is, I think, how do you stay in the here and now? You have people that help you, especially with that strategic piece, see about how are we going to get there. And that's just huge. And when you put those together, I don't have strategic real high. So I would see things, and it's like, let's do them, and it's going to be great, and let's just get going. But I needed somebody to slow me down and somebody to get the plan to get there too. Absolutely. But in terms of a leader, they may not be in that here and now too much. They just have to make sure somebody's there, and they may need to invoke some of that kind of attachment. Emotional imprint is what I sometimes think about.
Yeah, and Roseanne, anything that surprised you? This is Matt's question. Anything that surprises you or has surprised you about your futuristic?
It's a good question. That sometimes it's so hard to get out of your head, and maybe that's another theme too. But it surprises me, and when I talked about that having to erase it or adjust it, it's really hard for me to get something. If once I've got that picture in my head, it surprises me how hard it is to back off of it. And again, that might just be me and other themes I have that that are about that. The other thing I think it surprises me a little bit is that, just like with all themes, you think everybody has a picture, that everybody can think about what that could be, what it could feel like, what what it would sound like, and so I think it surprises me that more leaders, in particular, don't take the time to help people see that. One of the best things I say to people with futuristic is, get a piece of paper and pencil out and write out what it looks like. Write what it looks like, and that's where I ask them to use their senses, because I think sometimes, and I'm this way, my futuristic, I don't get a really clear picture, I get a glimpse, but it's an awesome glimpse, and it's so compelling, but it's not clear at all. I mean, it jumps around kind of to what something will feel like or sound like, or what an impact. Mine, I think, often is about a picture of the future, and it's tied to what will the legacy be, or what will the impact be, and years to come. And so I do think that sometimes I forget this, and other leaders, that you just have to communicate that, and not everybody has that capacity to communicate. I don't think I'm a great communicator, so you do have to think about, how do I do that best? Should I write about it? Should I say it? What is the best thing?
One more question from Paul, and then we'll kind of wrap it. For Roseanne, for you, how does your futuristic interact with your command, both from a complementary perspective and perhaps where there might be some tension of some type?
Oh, yeah. Well, that's probably when I was saying how I can't get something out of my head when I see a picture, and there's this kind of tenacity about it. I think tenacity is maybe a really nice word for something else, but I think that's that man that, we're going to do this. We're going to figure this out. It's going to happen. It's going to happen, So the picture is not just there, but it's just on a nice picture. It's, it's going to be great. It's going to happen. So that's I think command and activator, a lot of it. So it does. I think it has the piece that's good about it is very action oriented, and it survives naysayers or a lot of things like that. But yeah, it's like any of those strengths. You got to think about who your audience is, and you need to think about, do I need to slow down? And so that, analytical or maybe deliberative is huge. Context. I have context very low, but I think some people still, you need somebody to say, well, what worked in the past? How would that impact how this could look in the future?
No, very cool. Jeremy, I'll throw it back to you as we kind of put a bow around this today.
Yeah, first, Roseanne, just want to thank you just again for the impact that you've had again in your 30 years at Gallup and the lives of so many people that you've influenced. And again, I love the legacy that you and Kurt really lived together in regards to impacting the world. And I know Don Clifton had so many dreams and visions again for the way that strengths and understanding strengths would allow people to do what they do best every day. And the way he would always say it is to be a better version of themselves. And I love hearing you talk about this because again, so many even working with younger leaders or millennials, they're like, well, what do I do and how do I? but just seeing the level, as Kurt would always talk about, raw versus mature, and mature themes, having that sense of it's others focused versus me focused. And one takeaway that I think that you shared that I know I'll leverage myself with Futuristic, and thank you because it was a learning for me today, but I think so many of us out there, whether you have this theme or whether you're coaching somebody with it, that ability to again get back to how do we communicate that in a way that we knowingly realize our words, and the words, you said this, Roseanne, the words you choose. It's not just the words that come out, but the words you choose, and like you said, write them down, think through. But the words we choose, for those of us with a Futuristic, directly influence the emotions of those around us. And whether that's your relator, I think even your significance. I was looking up in that theme dynamics resource that again was Roy Kurt's last project that we put together in that Expanding Your Strengths online book. But if you're futuristic and significance, Roseanne, it says you envision a better future in your mind, and you are willing to be seen and heard so that others might hear and see your vision. And again, I think that others focus that you talked about so much and so fluently today, just remind us again, how do we take those big thoughts and ideas that we may have for those of us with Futuristic, but choosing words wisely to influence the emotions, positively influence the emotions of the people around us. So thank you so much just for who you are, for what you're doing, and for just sharing these stories with us today. I think it makes us all better as coaches, and helps us, again, not only to love this theme, but to help others to live it out. So thank you.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy.
Jeremy, I'll say thank you for filling in. Your team has, back in May, I went to Benjamin and said, we got to finish. And, your team has stepped in and done the final 10. It's taken us a while to get to this point. I was telling Roseanne early, Kurt picked the order of this, providentially, however you want to say it, back 18 months ago when we first birthed this idea of Theme Thursday. Kurt put this order together for us. And how ironic, how coincidental, how providential, however you want to say that in the way you think, that we would land on Futuristic, we would land with the two of you getting this. Roseanne, I think we'd always planned, in Kurt's heart of hearts, I think he wanted to do this final one with you.
Yeah, I think so too.
Jeremy's a great fill-in, but certainly it's for us a real honor to carry that legacy through to the final 34 here, and to get this final one done. If you're watching this, if you're watching this maybe in 2016 or 2017 or 2018, you may be wondering, because it will be out of order for you by that time. But we kind of use this video to wrap up all 34. And if you're one of the things that Kurt did better than anybody, I put a video together back in, I think, June. Yeah. That was Kurt thanking the guests, and if you just Google Theme Thursday. I think it's Theme Thursday, first 24. You will find that video, and it's just one after the other the way he thanked the guest. If you want a clinic on the way to recognize people, Kurt was better at it than anybody, and I didn't realize that until I was putting videos together for the funeral, and I thought, wow, this is really good content. And so if you want a video that teaches people how to do recognition, I think if we get anything, and we got tons.
Genuine recognition.
Genuine, yeah. I think we get tons of material out of these Themes Thursday, by the way. This is going to be a legacy. Again, Roseanne, you and I were talking earlier. That's going to live for decades in what we do here. That video of the first 24 and him doing is a clinic on how to really. Roseanne, I'm actually jealous that I only knew him for a year and a half, and you got to experience, because he changed the way I look at things. And
I think the themes I have, I honestly knew he loved those strengths in me, and I think there was a lot of power in our relationship that came as a result of, I think, him just falling in love with themes that weren't like his, and he could promote that and support it unbelievably.
Yeah. Well, it's good to put a wrap on this. In 2016, we are going to bring you season 2 of Theme Thursday, and we're excited to talk about that. Micah and I will be joining. When we put the Theme Thursday companion guides together, we put those together. That was early in the spring, and of course things changed, and so we really haven't been following those companion guides. And so Mike and I thought it'd be a great idea to put a series together, all 34, where we actually let you fill in the blanks that's on those companion guides. That's been a little frustrating for some that we haven't followed those to the letter. And so Mike is going to come back. We're going to do Theme Thursday Season 2 and give you the opportunity to fill those in. Plus, we're going to highlight Kurt's book, Theme Dynamics, and each week go through pairs that you help us pick. And this is all part of Gallup's weekly Strengths Wisdom series that we're going to do in 2016. We're super excited about it. You should be too. Head over to coaching.gallup.com and click on that. It'll say GWSW tab, and that will that everything, the dates. We would love for you to join along with us each week as we focus on one theme a week. We're going to reuse the videos that we did with Kurt and Kurt's team. During that, we're going to bring the companion guides back. We'll have these live online theme Thursdays again, a little bit different than this, a little bit different format. We want to change it up a little bit. But we have some great stuff planned for you in 2016. Make sure you're staying in touch with us via Facebook and through the blog and all those things, because we got a great program scheduled for you in 2016 and going forward. We'll remind everyone to take full advantage of all the resources we have available as well at the Gallup Strengths Center, just gallupstrengthscenter.com. Send us your questions, comments, contributions. If you want to be a guest blogger, we're taking, actually during this series, we are taking, these themes are going to be open for you to blog about, and we'd love to have those, and we'll post them on our site. Well, we won't post all of them, but we'll take the best of those and post them out there. Send us an email, coaching@gallup.com, then put guest blogger in there as well, and that will get to us. Join us in our Facebook group. Of course, we have a YouTube page where all these are posted. You can get there. iTunes and RSS feeds, the iPhone and Android apps that are available. The new Weekly Strengths Wisdom program, it's all available on our coaches blog. One site to go to, coaching.gallup.com. If you found this helpful, and I hope you have, please share it with your friends, your neighbors, your loved ones, your family, whoever you want. Throw it out there on Facebook. And we want to say thank you for joining us. Thank you to those who went through this journey with us. And 34 of these, I can't believe we're to the end of the first season on getting these done, but 34 of these, I want to thank you guys who give us so much incredible feedback on this. Now when I meet with you guys during training and those kinds of things, the number one thing I hear is thank you for doing the Theme Thursdays. And so we appreciate that as well. Roseanne, thank you again. Jeremy, thanks for jumping in from D.C. And with that, we'll say goodbye, everybody.